Okay, so we are going to do an introduction to transformations. We are basically going to be talking about 4 different types of transformations. The first one we're going to be talking about, and this is just, it's truly an introduction, and I will do each one of these individually once we are focusing on that topic. But just to give you an intro, we are going to talk about reflections, which, think of these as a flip. So if we had a coordinate plane and we had a figure here, if I flipped it about the x-axis, then that would put it down here. Okay, that is a reflection. To give you another more background, let's talk about image versus pre-image. If we are starting with this figure, so this is the original figure, and I have this labeled A, B, and C. After I do the reflection, these become primes. So this is going to be called the pre-image. This is where we start. And then this would be called the image, which is where we would end. We can't label this as another A, B, and C because then we can't keep them straight. So we are going to label these. If C is a reflection of this point, then this is going to be called C prime. So I'm going to put red C prime. This would be the reflection of B, so this would be B prime. And this point would be the reflection of A, so this would be labeled as A prime. Okay, so kind of an intro, quick intro into the primes. We also have what is called a translation. You think of a translation, think of a slide. So again, if I put this on a coordinate plane, and I have a figure here, we'll label this as D, E, F, and G. So if I slide this to the right and down, then this would be D prime, E prime, F prime, and G prime. What you should be noticing is that when I reflect or when I translate, this shape is congruent to this shape, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And you should notice that this, we're going to call it a rectangle, is going to be congruent to this rectangle because all we're doing is sliding it. Okay. Next we have what is called a rotation. And that is truly just a rotation, so think of it as a rotation. So if I have a triangle here and I am going to rotate it 90 degrees, then I would have a triangle approximately here. Again, I'm going to go, we'll do more of that in a little bit, but it's going to be rotated. So if this is F, G, and H, and I rotate it 90 degrees, then this would be F prime, G prime, and down there would be H prime. And like the other figures, this shape will be congruent to this shape. Okay? All 3 of these shapes, reflections, rotations, and translations, let me zoom out here a minute, all of these are known as congruence transformations. Okay, all three of these are known as congruence transformations because what you start with, the shape you start with, and the shape you end with are exactly the same. They are congruent. The sides stay the same length and the angles stay the same measure. Okay, so those are three of the transformations that we're going to talk about. The other transformation that we are going to talk about is called a dilation. And a dilation, think of it when you go to the doctor's office and they put those weird drops in your eyes. It makes your pupils really big. Also think of this as what happens if you put a picture or something on a copy machine. You can quote unquote blow it up, which we are going to call an enlargement. Or you can shrink it or make it smaller, and we call that a reduction. So an example of this would be, let's think of your pupil. So if you have your pupil here, and then they put the weird drops in it, and your pupil is here now, these are not congruent, so these are not congruence transformations. And again, we will talk more about those once we are hitting that specific topic. Think of it as if you have a square and we put this picture on a copy machine and we hit 150%. Is it going to get bigger or is it going to get smaller? If I say 150%, well, it's going to get bigger. It is going to enlarge. So again, our beginning shape is not the same size as our end shape, so this is not a congruence transformation. When we are talking about transformations, again, an important concept is going to be the understanding the preimage, which we already talked about. So the preimage is what you start with, labeled just with A's, B's, and C's. And then the image, so this is after our transformation, after our reflection, or after our translation, then that is when you would have the primes. Now, let's say, for example, that I am going to translate this figure, which we did, and then I'm going to reflect it back over here. Then what would happen, so let's say that I reflected this then, this piece would then be E prime prime. This would be F prime prime, D prime prime, and oopsie, this would be G prime prime, and this would be D prime prime. So what do you think would happen again if I reflected this again, maybe over here? I would have D prime prime prime, E prime prime prime, etc. Okay, so you need to understand the preimage versus the image.